How's it going, you guys? So in this video, I'm going to be clarifying my stance on carbohydrates. Recently, I've made a number of videos just explaining why you actually don't need plant foods to be healthy or to survive, both in the short term and the long term. And many people, they assume that I, for some reason, am saying that carbohydrates or plant foods are unhealthy. And so that's a lack of ability to think in nuances, right? Because nutrition science in general is very nuanced and it's not black or white, it's not good or bad. Here's the facts. So, carbohydrates can be eaten in an overall healthy diet. Okay, they can be a part of an overall healthy diet. That's obvious. Plant foods can obviously be eaten in an overall healthy diet. Okay, that as well is obvious. Now, there's a lot of carnivore and keto YouTubers who might push this idea that plant foods are evil or that carbohydrates are going to cause disease no matter what, and that you know, brown rice is the equivalent of sugar or something like that, of refined sugar. And I'm not promoting this idea at all, but I think a lot of people, when they listen to me talk about why plant foods and carbs are unnecessary, they're automatically thinking that I'm like one of those YouTubers. And that's not the case at all. So obviously, you can look at traditional cultures of all kinds, particularly the Okinawans. So Okinawans, traditionally, they did eat pork, they did eat fish, and they also ate a lot of plant foods, including a large amount of purple sweet potatoes. The problem with the data that's collected from the Okinawan longevity diet is it was taken during World War II and a variety of other wars from the 1940s up into the 1960s. So they were calorically restricted and eating nothing but purple sweet potatoes because their island was compromised by military forces. So when you see these plant-based people and these longevity diet promoters who are selling their books based on the idea that the Okinawan longevity centenarians, people who lived over 100, were eating nothing but sweet potatoes and they were eating like these severely calorie restricted diets to extend their longevity, you must understand the whole reason why they were starving themselves is because their island was compromised by military forces. But the point here is that them, as well as, the centenarians from Loma Linda, Costa Rica, even the Mediterranean, they ate a large amount of plant foods. And so if you can live to be over 100 years old, eating a large amount of plant foods every single day, all your life, it's obvious that number one, carbohydrates are not the cause of all diseases, whole food carbohydrates. Number two, plant foods do not cause disease. Like, they are not like evil or poisonous in general, as far as threatening your longevity. So that alone is my stance on like how unhealthy carbs or plant foods are. They're not unhealthy. However, the fact is, um, there are a lot of autoimmune diseases that are triggered by certain compounds found in plants, okay? There are irritating compounds found in nightshade vegetables, for example, that can trigger arthritis and pain conditions. I myself find that anytime I eat nightshades, it triggers pain and makes me a lot more sore, and I'm hurting much more from my martial arts training and my athletic training when I eat nightshade vegetables. Also, whole grains and beans, and also nuts and seeds tend to be very hard for a lot of people to digest. Now, if you soak and sprout and ferment them, it might be easier. But there's a lot of people, like myself, for example. I was vegan for an entire year, and I tried everything in my power to um, to digest whole grains because I was very fascinated with black rice, purple rice, you name it, and the polyphenols and antioxidants that these plant foods contained. But I could not digest them to save my life. I boiled them into a porridge. I soaked them overnight. I sprouted them. I put them in a slow cooker for like 48 hours. I took enzyme supplements, probiotics, apple cider vinegar. I did everything that all the vegans were telling me to do to digest those plant foods, and I could not do it. So there's a variety of reasons why that might be the case. But the bottom line is when we're talking about nutrition, science, and health for individuals, it's harmful to tell everybody that you must eat broccoli to be healthy, or whole grains are, a major source of nutrition for a healthy diet, because a lot of people suffer there's when they eat these plant foods. I myself found that when I remove whole grains, beans, and nuts and seeds, and I eat closer to an autoimmune paleo diet, that my irritable bowel syndrome went completely away. My psoriasis went completely away. Brain fog was lifted, and I felt healthier than ever in my life. And I got ripped within like 6 weeks after making that switch. Probably because of all the bloating that was, making my abs not visible for the first time in my life without even like restricting calories. So, um, it's going to depend on the individual, what type of foods, might trigger their symptoms. If you have an autoimmune condition, you should definitely look into an elimination diet. Something like the carnivore diet would definitely be, the ultimate elimination diet, but Whole30, autoimmune paleo, or even something like the Primal Blueprint. Okay, because that's helped a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Like, we could probably make a cohort study from all the testimonials that the internet provides. It's more than just anecdotes. It's hundreds of thousands of people who have like posted their pictures of their diseases and remission, lab results, you name it. So for many people, these foods are problematic. However, I also believe that plant foods can be used. Oh, and so you don't actually need fiber for digestion. That's something most people can't, like, they just can't like allow that to be true. They just like, no, there's no way, like, I need fiber. But like, no, I've been eating carnivore, almost exclusively carnivore since November of 2018. And every now and then I include a little bit of plants or carbs, and usually they cause me constipation and brain fog and athletic performance problems. But I find when I'm exclusively carnivore, every single morning I take a poop immediately. It's giant. It's the most healthiest poop I've ever taken. And so I realize salt and fat are the two things that improve my bowels. Fiber tends to clog me up. And there's a lot of people that feel that way, and there's several intervention trials that actually show there's a dose-dependent response between constipation and fiber intake, where the least amount of fiber, like the group that completely removed fiber, had complete remission in their chronic constipation symptoms. And many people find that fiber causes colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, and Crohn's disease. But most medical professionals will tell you the exact opposite. So, and then I've talked about how your body can create its own antioxidants endogenously, and from amino acids and vitamin and mineral cofactors. So you don't really need to eat antioxidants in plants because your body produces, it creates glutathione and superoxide dismutase, which are its two most important primary antioxidants inside of itself endogenously. So you don't really need to eat vitamin C or any of these things, but vitamin C can help, especially if you're in the middle of a pandemic, or there's you want to boost your immunity to protect yourself from viruses and things. Also, vitamin C and some of these other vitamin and mineral supplements and found in food as well. Sometimes they have other effects like boosting mood and cognition and relieving anxiety and things. So as like a medicine, a lot of these plants, or even eating a high amount of a certain plant food for a certain nutrient, can have some type of medicinal effect for certain people. But for other people, they may experience illnesses from the same plants, and it's not necessary for most people at all times. But like I was saying, your body can create its own antioxidants endogenously. So you don't need to eat polyphenols, curcumin, resveratrol. You don't need to take antioxidant supplements or any of that to, produce antioxidants. Like, you just don't. You don't need to eat Brazil nuts for selenium. You don't. Um, that's a fact, okay? But if you enjoy carbohydrates, and you feel like they boost your immunity, then sure. But don't think you have to spend, like an extra $30 on a couple pounds of vegetables per week to boost your immunity, for minerals, or to be healthy. So, as far as mineral content, there is approximately 100 to 200 milligrams of magnesium per pound of meat. So, if you're eating lean muscle meat, the leaner the meat, the more minerals it's going to contain. And most of those minerals will get lost in the juices, so make sure you drink the juices as well. So, 1 pound of like 98% lean ground beef, for example, I believe it has around 200 milligrams of magnesium. And in order to reach the minimum optimal protein intake, which it's debatable depending on what expert you ask, but typically the daily recommended intake for protein that's recommended by the government, it's meant to prevent protein deficiency symptoms like what you see in poverty, third world countries, where you get, you know, like you basically die if you eat under that protein intake per day. But essentially, 1 gram per pound of lean mass per day is probably optimal for neurotransmitter function, to maintain lean muscle mass, and to feel optimal and to promote satiety as well. So, what I'm saying here is if you get that 1 gram per pound of lean mass for whatever your body weight and body composition is, from whole muscle meat, from like red meat, etc., you're going to get all the minerals you need. There's approximately 2,000 milligrams of magnesium per pound of lean muscle meat as well. And that's going to vary depending on the type of meat and the leanness. But you can get, like, you can even reach your daily recommended intake of minerals from meat alone. So again, you don't necessarily need to eat plant foods for minerals, but carbohydrates will help your body retain minerals. And that's very important because on low carb diets, people have trouble with electrolyte issues even if they supplement, because they need to eat extra salt for the first 2 months until their body adapts to retaining water without high sugar and insulin levels. So I mean, again, it's like, there's benefits to eating carbs, and net side effects to eating low carb, but either way, you can still be healthy if you're doing it right. There's minerals. You can get minerals from meat. You don't actually need them from plants. And the minerals that are found in plant foods, a lot of times so you also have anti-nutrients. Okay, so anti-nutrients again is a heavily debated subject. If you cook plant foods, typically you can degrade a lot of the anti-nutrients, but you don't get rid of them completely. And traditional cultures typically would spend, um, you know, 1 to 4, sometimes 6 days preparing foods to remove their anti-nutrients completely. And these are cultures that didn't have science to tell them anti-nutrients existed. They just knew that if they ate these plant foods without soaking, sprouting, fermenting, and pulverizing into mush, they knew that they were going to have health problems because they observed it in their clanmates or whatever, their tribes. And you can read a lot about this from Sally Fallon and Weston Price's work. The best resource is a quick, easy read for the layman would be Nourishing Diets by Sally Fallon. It talks all about all of this. And they all ate plant foods and carbohydrates. They ate a high carb, high plant, and high animal food diet. But they prepared these foods strategically, okay? To remove the anti-nutrient content, to allow a lot of these minerals to exist and to be digested and absorbed without the side effects of some of the anti-nutrients and probably some of the irritating nutrients found in these foods as well. Things like brown rice and whatnot and beans, they can be very irritating to the digestion and things. And sprouting, fermenting, soaking, pulverizing into congee will definitely help to relieve a lot of these digestive symptoms in these plant foods. And I, for one, have suffered from, whole grain syndrome for a long time until I just removed them and realized I didn't need them. So there's that. And then, of course, as far as athletic performance is concerned, like a lot of people, so first of all, if you get enough salt and you get enough protein in your diet, and I'm speaking from experience, I've been doing MMA, kickboxing, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and jiu-jitsu for almost 2 years now on a keto slash carnivore diet. And I've experienced, so what I found is the more volume you do, like if you do if you do two hardcore interval, high intensity MMA sessions in one day, you might experience some fatigue from the training itself. But carbohydrates don't improve performance between bouts. They might give you a mental high, like 20 grams of dextrose, which you can still maintain ketosis with 20 grams of dextrose, but it might relieve some of the fatigue by giving you a mental high, but it doesn't boost performance. In fact, I found my stamina and my endurance and my explosiveness is even better without carbohydrates when I'm just straight keto for months and months at a time. And you can actually look up my exhibition match where I was facing a guy who was eating fruit up to the session, and I was just explosive and moving the whole time. And he was hardly really giving much energy output compared to myself, who was just like leg kicking, jumping around, combos, doing some spin shit. Your body actually creates its own glucose endogenously through gluconeogenesis. It preferentially converts fatty acids, free fatty acids, and the glycerol backbone of triglycerides into glucose and glycogen. In the FASTER study by Stephen Finney and Jeff Volok, they actually showed that keto-adapted elite bicyclists refueled their glycogen stores up to 2 times faster than the high carb elite bicyclists. So elite athletes on a bicycle for 1 hour going as hard as they can. And the high fat people actually refill glycogen faster. And this was actually, and the other thing is that, so they measured with muscle biopsies, and the high carb athletes actually had a high carb shake post workout, and the high fat actually had a high fat keto shake. Yet, even with those carbohydrates, the high carb group still lagged behind in carbohydrate refueling and glycogen refueling. And the other thing is that the keto adapted athletes actually performed as good or even better than the high carb group. So, you don't seem to need carbs for athletic performance if you eat enough protein and get enough minerals, some salts and things. But the thing is, it takes time for your body to adapt to keto, especially for an athlete. And if you're not eating 5 grams of sodium per day minimum, most people are scared to get that, and they just assume they are. And then they just when they eat carbs, they feel better because their body starts retaining water again. Then, of course, you're gonna feel like crap, but it takes time. So there's that, right? So I mean, I'm just, so my overall thing is like, look, if you just want to be healthy, you don't want any complicated nonsense, eat the whole foods that you enjoy and make sure you're getting enough animal protein in your diet. For me personally, I honestly 100% believe that getting, 1 gram per pound of lean mass per day, even in sedentary individuals, from animal protein will make you overall healthier. And if you believe saturated fat is bad for you, look, that's fine, okay? Even though there's no real causal evidence for that. You can get that protein from lean chicken if you really want to, although you'll be missing the choline and some of these other factors involved in creating glutathione from methionine or from homocysteine. You might get high homocysteine levels because you don't have enough choline in your diet. Might, but that's not for sure. But the point here is you'll get all the minerals and the vitamins and the other things that you need from the animal protein, even if it's lean. So, fish is fine, lean beef, lean chicken, that's fine. You don't have to eat the saturated fat. as long as you're getting that animal protein in. And then you can fill in the rest of your diet with whole carbohydrate foods. But keep in mind, if you have, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, spondylating stenosis, or whatever that other, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, the list goes on. If you have any of these autoimmune problems, you might want to look into an elimination diet for your health. Because those plant foods might actually be triggering inflammation. So, and I've made videos going into the science behind why curcumin might not be the miracle we think it is, polyphenols and the nuances behind all that, and, on and on and on. But this video is just like an overall overview of my opinion on carbohydrates, I think plants are medicine. I think if you have certain conditions and you use garlic or turmeric or, hoshu wu or reishi mushroom or whatever. I mean, look, I do the same thing. Coffee as a tonic. You can take coffee as a tonic. People generally don't drink coffee to be healthy. They drink it because it gives them a certain effect. I think that's great. But if you think that you have to spend all this money on plant foods and stuff your intestines with these foods to be healthy, I mean, that's wrong. And you might just be making it harder for yourself. The other thing is gut microbiome. I've talked about why, it's heavily based on correlation, and your gut microbiome is a reflection of the type of foods you eat, not like they don't cause health outcomes. It's just when you eat broccoli, it feeds the bacteria that eats the broccoli fibers. When you eat brown rice, it feeds the bacteria that eats the brown rice fibers. And so those bacteria that you get from your food, its main objective is to help you digest the food that's feeding it. Okay, it's not to like produce all these other outcomes, but some bacteria can produce byproducts that can produce health or negative health outcomes, sure. But people who have, high amounts of lactobacillus, for example, might have better health outcomes, but they might only have high amounts of lactobacillus in their gut microbiome because they're eating a healthy food. So it's healthy user bias again. So yeah. I don't want to make this video too long. Clearly there's a lot of things to cover, and the thing is, it's just like, no one wants to watch these videos and hear all of the nuances. Everyone just wants to believe plant foods are bad, or carbs are bad, or, if you think carbs are unhealthy, or, I don't think carbs are unhealthy. It's just that they're unnecessary. That's all. Carbs are unhealthy. And carbs are unnecessary. Plant foods are unnecessary. That's a fact as far as I'm concerned. You don't need them. But I don't think they're unhealthy, and I don't think they're healthy. They're unnecessary, and they can provide nutrients if you consider all of the other nuances. But people can't think like this. They can only think, they're either good or they're bad. Which one are you saying? Like, they're neutral, and it depends on the person and the context. So, I don't know. Hopefully this has cleared some things up. If you have any questions, post them down below, and I'll talk to y'all next time.